With love comes loss, son. It's part of the deal. How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World is directed by DeBlois and starring Jay Baruchel, America Ferrera, F. Murray Abraham, Cate Blanchette, Gerard Butler, Craig Ferguson, Jonah Hill, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, and Kristen Wiig. This is the third and I believe final film in the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy. This film is once again centered around characters we know and love of Hiccup and Toothless and all of their friends, and we pick up about a year later after the events of How to Train Your Dragon 2. And now Hiccup is the leader of Berk, and he is also dealing with a lot of problems, specifically when it comes to what to do with all of the dragons that are now inhabiting Berk, and he comes to the conclusion that he needs to find this hidden world. But of course, there is a new threat out there in this Night Fury Hunter in Grimmel, voiced by F. Murray Abraham, so he has to deal with that, as well as finding a new place for both his people as well as the dragons to live. This has been one of my favorite kind of under-the-radar animated franchises that have come along in the last few years. The first film came out in 2010, then the second film came out in 2014, and here we are now in 2019 with the third film. There was also a television series that ran for about 40 episodes with all of the same voice actors from the movies, which is really nice. And I just find myself completely enveloped in this world of Berk, this Viking-like world that is also inhabited by dragons, by good people, by bad people. And at the heart of this story that we've gotten from the very beginning is the relationship between Hiccup and Toothless. And once again in this film, the main strength of it is that. Once again, Hiccup is voiced by Jay Baruchel. This is kind of his film franchise as well as that of DeBlois, who I think combined do a fantastic job of delivering us such wonderful entertainment, as well as things that appeal to both children and adults as well. That's what I really love about the great animated franchises out there, is that they are for every type of audience. Getting back to the relation between Hiccup and Toothless, the film really heavily relies on that, and their relationship now has grown and evolved over the first two films to when initially you can kind of see that kind of pet and master relationship now has blossomed into a best friend type of relationship, one that is really strong and really codependent. And that is one of the more interesting themes in this film, is how can these two characters both exist together as well as apart. And being apart from one another, I think, is one of the biggest trials that these two characters have to go through. We also get a great band of friends that we've seen from the first and second films. We also have Astrid, who is voiced by America Ferrera, who is the main love interest of Hiccup, but she is also a really strong and powerful female character from the very beginning, and even so now. And we get to see how their relationship has now taken a more mature and more interesting development, because now they're at the point where it's time for them to get married, so they have to deal with that whole thing. And also Hiccup has to deal with being the official leader of Berk, something that I think was going to be inevitable in his life, but now it is thrust upon him. He has to deal with all of those problems and all the existential threats to Berk. What we get in this film is a new, very similar, very familiar type of antagonist in Grimmel, portrayed by F. Murray Abraham, who I think does a fantastic job of voicing him and kind of making him much more comedic than I was anticipating, which really works for the tone of this film. Because when we get our antagonists or our bad guys, the tone of this film definitely shifts to being more darker, for obvious reasons. Unfortunately for me, he's also one of the negative aspects I have with this film. You kind of really didn't need him in this film at all. You could kind of just rely on the relationship between Toothless and Hiccup and all the trials that they have to deal with, and you could have built the plot around that, but in kind of more standard form. You need that antagonist to pose some type of big overall threat, which I really didn't feel was necessary. What I would definitely say is another main positive of the film is that this is a gorgeous visual film. I love the animation style that these films have adopted and how just amazing they look on the big screen as well as the small screen at home. And I also think it's a very beautiful film from that perspective, as well as for the themes of friendship and family and growing, and all of those internal type of things that a lot of us are dealing with in real life and can relate to are in this film. And I think that that is really important because a lot of people have grown up with these films. As I said, the first film came out 9 years ago, so all of those children are now almost a decade older, dealing with all kinds of new problems. So the film can be very relatable to them as well as the people who are older like myself. Without giving away any plot spoilers, my favorite part of this film is probably its third act. It has a very emotional and impactful effect on its audience. I know it had me choking up a little bit, and it really ended very strongly. And I also really liked how the character of Toothless grows in this film and matures in this film, and the things he has to go through with dealing with this new Light Fury and how Hiccup has to help him. I thought that was just fantastic to watch, and it really has a good way of interconnecting all of the different aspects that this franchise has given us when it comes to bond and friendship. So with all of that being said, I'm going to give this film a 4.2 out of 5 stars. It is one of my favorite films of the year currently. It is the beautiful, wonderful end to, I think, a very strong franchise, and I highly recommend this film for anyone who has been fans of it in the past. This has been my review of How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. If you like this video, please check out the other videos on my channel.